up, my homies? This is the Berkley Nessie. You guys have probably seen it a whole bunch, kind of a unique bait. However, I was talking to my buddy and he's like, bro, you know that's a knockoff of a JDM bait.
Oh, really?
The Nessie is sort of a replica of what is called the Grow Design Works flag, kind of a long name, the 170 and the 255. So we're gonna take the Grow Design Works flag 170 and 255 and compare it to the 7-inch and 9-inch Nessie, $19.99, that $20 price range, versus $60 to $90, and see if it actually makes a difference. So hit that like and subscribe button. I have no idea what's gonna happen, but I'm very curious to see how it works out. So I'm gonna start with the 255 Grow Design. We're just gonna pitch this thing out here, and we're gonna start with just kind of a slow retrieve, just your standard kind of slow roll. I'm not using any kind of cadence. So it has a really good S to it. It's very responsive and very natural. It almost reminds me a little bit of a shiner. I like the weight too, because it sort of settles the bait. The bigger ones always tend to work a little bit better, but just on a nice slow retrieve, you're getting a very natural kind of undulated medium kind of swoop back and forth. What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna pitch this thing out. I'm gonna use more of a chop glide retrieve. So I'm gonna use that rod tip to kind of like jerk bait it back, and we're getting great cuts, like wide cuts. And it's kind of like going on its side, but it's not rolling over. It's cutting back and forth, but it's not actually rolling. It's holding that cut and not kind of spoiling out or washing out. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a cadence retrieve. Basically what that is a short turn and a pause, short turn and a pause, short turn and a pause. And so once again, it's super responsive. When you do that kind of like hit and pause, I'm getting a pretty wide cut, but I'm getting behavior much like that chop glide, where it's very responsive to that tension, right? So it's cutting left, it's cutting right and pausing, and I'm not getting any roll and washout on it. So we strapped on the 9-inch Nessie. I should note, we don't have any supplementary weights on either of these. You can extra weight them, and we're gonna talk about that in a bit, but this is just the straight out of the package deal. So we're gonna pitch it out. We're gonna do a standard, just regular slow roll retrieve. So the 9-inch holds pretty well. The one thing that you will notice though is I guess you call it like the fluidity of the motion. It's not nearly as natural as the Grow Design. It doesn't have this sort of like dancing back and forth motion. The other thing that you get slightly is a little bit of a rock from the top of the bait. It's not holding a straight sort of form as it's cutting back and forth. It takes a second to get it started too, and I'm having to slow roll it a little slower than the Grow Design. The other thing that I'm noticing too, so one of the aspects of this bait is it has like a mesh interior to it, whereas the Grow Design, I believe, is just a straight plastic. There's a little bit more of a robotic sort of feel to the action. It's a lot more geometric, if that makes sense. It's cutting lines instead of making like hoops and circles back and forth. So let's try this on a chop glide retrieve. So back and forth, just using the rod tip to dance it. And this is kind of interesting. So one, it did just wash out a couple times. The other thing that I'm noticing is the bend on the bait. So whereas the Grow Design sort of flows and never has sort of like a 90-degree turn in any manner, this bait, it will chop and kind of hold that bent sort of right angle or semi-right angle action when you're chopping it. A little less natural, right? It's a little less fluid in the water. So the other thing I wanna do with this guy too is I wanna do that cadence retrieve, see what happens. Okay, so you know what? This is the retrieve I almost like the most on this. But the one thing I'm noticing immediately, we did not do any supplementary weights on the Nessie, is there's much more of a rise with the Nessie versus that 255 Grow Design. I'm gonna try it once more just to see, and I actually wanna see too. All right, so when I burn it, it actually holds pretty well, but once again, that rise comes into play. And I'm not like frying it like I do a jerkbait, but you know, a little more steady paced kind of swim bait retrieve. It rises up and you end up getting kind of like a, I don't know, like a top water kind of a wake bait, I guess, kind of feel to it. And at some point it does wash out because it loses the water pressure. So let's dive into the key features and the bait battle aspect. By far, from a bait battle standpoint, the Grow Design Works flag won. So it won from an action standpoint, a responsiveness standpoint. It was just a better bait overall. But there's a caveat to that. So the price point on the Nessies, these guys come in anywhere from, I think it's like $5.99 to like $9. So price point wise, we're talking about like hundreds of percentages more expensive. Is it actually worth it? So let's break down some key features. Where the Grow design really really excelled was the naturalness of the action. It was super fluid, right? It had this S, it really held tight when doing a chop glide, when doing the retrieves. It really it exemplified just a higher level premium bait and a more lifelike, realistic presentation. It was a lot easier to control, whether it was chop gliding, whether it was kind of reeling at a faster pace, whether it was kind of a cadence retrieve. That was the key with the Grow design. With that being said, what are the key differences? Well, on the Nessie, it actually has a hook keeper. So there's actually like a little grabber mechanism that they installed. So you can actually install the hook inside the bait as well as clip it in. So it gives that hold of the hook a little more just viable. It holds better when you're chopping it and casting it. With the Grow design, there is a hook holder, but it's completely integrated into the bait. It's just a slot, right? So you slide the hook in. I notice after a cast, after a pitch, that splash, the hook sometimes would drop out and be dangling. It didn't really inhibit the action or change the action at all, but it definitely, if you're trying to keep that hook up because you're just ticking over the tops of the grass, it's definitely something that's a little different. The other big difference that you notice between these two is the fins. The Grow design incorporates the fins as a part of the body. It's a soft plastic fin on both the front of the bait as well as the tail. Whereas the Nessie, this is a hard plastic, kind of like the bill of a crankbait, bill of a jerkbait. It's a hard plastic that's glued into the bait. And I think that's part of the reason that you got a much more robotic action from the Nessie. It was much more linear. It was much more geometric in the way it chopped and acted. However, during some of those burning retrieves, I really get the impression that if we implemented some, say for instance, some lead line like this, like I use with, my jerk baits to weight that front hook, if you incorporated a little bit of weighting and held that bait down, I think those fins actually provide a good stability kind of sense for burning or reeling that bait at a little faster pace. It holds that S as long as there's enough ballast weight to hold the bait down. So lastly, and I think this speaks to the total action difference between the two baits, the Grow design is a totally plastic soft swim bait. Now that has its benefits and its negatives. In my opinion, I haven't fished this thing enough and tore it up enough to know, but frankly, this thing's gonna tear up. The little guy is like $69.99. The big one, the 255, comes in at like 89 or 99. Dude, like super high price points, right? Even for like a hard plastic glide bait. Well, these are soft plastic glide baits and it's all plastic. There's no kind of mesh, there's no kind of wire formation inside the body. So this thing can get tore up and shredded. Whereas the Berkley Nessie, it's a harder plastic, it's more durable, but that also inhibits the action. There's also the integration, and it's very tough to see, but there's a mesh that runs throughout this bait that actually connects it, making it a lot more durable, but leading to that more robotic kind of back and forth mechanical kind of action where it's chopping and it doesn't look as sort of curved and natural. When it came to the 7-inch, once again, the 170 Grow design won. The one exception to that being is I noticed with the 7-inch Nessie, a more steady, maybe not a burning retrieve, but a steady retrieve. This thing had a really good kind of like S-ing motion to it. It was not as good as the Grow design. However, it really, for a price point difference of like $50, $60, I think it is, I'll take the Nessie, dude. Like, it did what it needed to do. Overall though, the 170, the flag really performed better. It had a very natural, I compare everything to kind of like shiners, it had this very natural kind of S-ing circular motion, much like the 255, and it was much easier to control. I hope you guys enjoyed this, dude. I enjoy doing these bait battles. It's a fun way to kind of explore and see what these baits are actually doing using the pool and kind of get an idea of what am I losing, what am I gaining based upon the knockoff, based upon the original, and do just an analysis of what you're getting out of your dollar when it comes to, spending it at Tackle Warehouse and grabbing some tackle. I'll put links to the Nessie and the Grow design at Tackle Warehouse for you guys to check out. Let me know what you think. If you've tried these guys and done a comparison, if you're into soft plastic glides or even standard glides, let me know kind of your takeaways. Those were my general feelings, and to be honest with you, I'm not dumping my Nessies. I will throw my grow design, but it's gonna be in certain situations when I need the most articulate, perfect, natural action. But this guy's the first one I'm gonna pull out and tie on. We'll see you next time on Bait Battles, talking about fishing, talking about baits. Later, boys.